Joyce Vanderveer, the co-chair or acting chair of Women's International League for Peace and Freedom, Monterey County Branch. We are very happy to be sponsoring this event today, which is being hosted here at the Monterey Peace and Justice Center, a community-supported facility dedicated to education on peace, nonviolence, democracy, social justice, and sustainability. The views expressed at this meeting are not necessarily endorsed by WILF or by the Center, whose objective is to stimulate discussion and thinking on social and political issues. The Center is supported by volunteer efforts and donations from people like you. Today's donations are all dedicated to our speaker, and I hope you will find it in your heart to want to make a donation for him. To learn more about the programs of the Center, please pick up a flyer that says Monterey Peace and Justice Center on that table by the front door. And while you're there, if you didn't sign in when you came in the door, do sign in. We kind of like to know how many people came and who came to our meetings. If you want us to follow up with you, it won't come from that list. You need to fill out one of these forms that signs you up to get the Monterey Peace Calendar, which comes out once a week on email to tell you all about social events, social justice events and peace events, nonviolence things on the peninsula or anywhere in Monterey County. And you also can sign up to receive a quarterly letter from the Peace Center talking about our activities. So those slips are again on the front table where you came in. The Center's library behind me here is available to you when the Center is open on Wednesday and Saturday from 1 to 5:30 p.m. And we are in the process of getting our library digitalized so that we'll be able to have a listing of our books on the cloud, and you'll know what's here and what you can come and borrow. It hasn't been very accessible because nobody knows what's there. So we're working on that, and it should soon be up and running. Also, when you come in on Wednesday and Saturday, you can come in to enjoy our art gallery. Right now, we're between shows, so you're not going to enjoy anything. We've had a miniature art show, which was very successful, and it's come down, and the next show hasn't come up yet. But we have a new curator for our art gallery, and I think we'll have some very nice showings in the coming year. So now, I am pleased to turn the meeting over to Barbara Honegger, who made most of the arrangements for this meeting, and who will introduce our speaker.
Now you were going to give the rules.
Oh, that's right. I'm going to do that now rather than wait till the discussion time. Because Women's International League for Peace and Freedom and the Peace Center are peace organizations, they expect the behavior at their own events to model the peace that they are promoting in the world. We're all learning together to be the peace we seek. Every person is to be respected. Listening is key. During the discussion after the talk, there should be no interruptions. Raise your hand if you want to be recognized to speak. No personal attacks. Talk about the issues. Be brief so that others can speak as well. We'll give you a hand signal if you're talking too long.
That's the first step.
Okay, so with that sort of ordinary civil behavior in mind, we'll go on with the program, and Barbara Honegger will be our master of ceremonies.
Okay, thank you. Okay, everybody, it's great to see how many folks came out. This is wonderful. I'd like to see who learned about this event from the Coast Weekly. So maybe half a dozen. Who learned about it from an email blast from the Peace Center or Will? A good 2/3. Great. Anybody else learned about it some other way? No? Those were the, well, Bonnie. Okay. There are a few things that I'd like to do before I introduce our very famous or infamous speaker. And that is to let you know that we have, to my knowledge, you'll have to speak up if there's a VIP here that I don't know about. But we have 2 VIPs in the audience. I'd like to introduce former Senator Mike Gravel of Alaska, who is here. And his wonderful spouse and partner, Whitney, is here. I'm so glad, because people need to know that Mike Gravel and I were absolutely instrumental, along with an organization called the Lawyers Committee for 9/11 Inquiry, of which I'm on the board. Many of you know that I'm one of the world's leaders of the 9/11 Truth Movement. And Mike Gravel and myself and the president, then president and litigation director of the Lawyers Committee for 9/11 Inquiry, worked with Mike Gravel, and we got the famous 28 pages released after almost 16 years of being classified. And when those 28 pages of the very first official congressional investigation of 9/11, which itself, of course, was a cover-up, but nevertheless, that chapter had been classified and hidden away for almost a decade and a half, and that was because it was substantive, and it gave the information about the Saudi links to 9/11. And Mike Gravel and myself and our organization called the Lawyers Committee for 9/11 Inquiry got those released. And once they were released, within days, the Justice Against Sponsors of Terrorism Act, known as JASTA, was passed, if you can imagine, originally with a unanimous vote of all Republicans, all Democrats, all members of the House and the Senate. And then Obama vetoed it, took the side of Saudi Arabia against all of the 9/11 victims' family members. And of course, they overrode his veto. The only veto of President Obama ever overridden in his 8 years as President of the United States. And that is thanks in great part to Mike Gravel. And our other VIP we have in the audience, and she's going to probably kill me for saying so, is Bonnie Faulkner. Bonnie Faulkner. So Bonnie Faulkner, as many of you know, has recently been a target of outrageous censorship at KPFA, which is the flagship radio station in what's supposed to be the most progressive city in the country, or one of the most progressive cities in the country after Santa Cruz. So she was recently removed from her 17-and-a-half-year position there for many of the same reasons that Gilad Atzmon has been sanctioned, if you will, by people who don't want you to know the truth. So anyway, I just wanted everybody to know who our VIPs are. And after our presentation, I will have an announcement before the Q's and A's. I'm not going to take the time now with that, but we have had a huge breakthrough for 9/11 truth and justice. We are now inside the castle of the United States government. The United States Attorney for the Southern District of New York sent our Lawyers Committee for 9/11 Inquiry, with whom Senator Mike Gravel worked to get JASTA passed and the 28 pages released a couple of years ago, and in September of 2016. November 7th of this year, our Lawyers Committee received a letter from the U.S. Attorney for the Southern District of New York letting us know that he was going to comply with the law. He cited the federal statute he was going to comply with, and they are convening a special federal criminal grand jury, specially convened for the purpose of reinvestigating the true causes of what happened on 9/11 at the World Trade Center. All right, so if you'd like to know more about that during the Q's and A's, I can answer that as well. So I'd now like to introduce our amazing speaker. So I was thinking about how to start to introduce Gilad, he says.
Jihad.
This is Gilad Atzmon, right? And I was thinking, the best way to do that is to make an analogy with the Bible. You remember David and Goliath? Well, you're looking at David. He has taken on the Goliath of those who don't want you to know the truth about what is happening with the, let us call it, the Zionist, the fascist wing of Zionism, not only in Israel, but in the United States and Europe and throughout the world. And it's terrible, terrible, terrible consequences. He has, believe it or not, given up his birthright citizenship in Israel, which you can imagine has made him popular. Okay, so I'm just going to read, many of you have already seen this, but I'm just going to read a brief introduction here. So Gilad Atzmon gave up his birthright citizenship in Israel. And in great part because he was ostracized there, not allowed to speak, due to his outspoken and uncompromising criticism of the violent Israeli policies, especially against the Palestinians. He has literally become a man without a country, and that's the downside. The upside is that he is now literally a global citizen. He is now on a global speaking tour that this is part of. He's now on his West Coast speaking tour, and we are going to ask you 3 times during this event to please donate to Gilad. He's going to, maybe himself, if he doesn't, I will later, tell you about what happened to him in Britain and the reason that he has an approximate $30,000 legal bill that he's trying to pay off with his fundraising speaking tour that he is on. His controversial writings on the truth about Zionism, the state of Israel, the Middle East, and the U.S. Jewish lobby, and Jewish identity politics have been both praised and endorsed by some of the world's leading scholars and humanists. And of course, for those who don't want you to know, his views have also been hotly critiqued by prominent voices in, believe it or not, both by Israeli and some Palestinian groups. If you care to understand Zionist Israel, you must read Gilad Atzmon's book, The Wandering Who. That was by Paul Craig Roberts, with whom I served in the White House and the Reagan administration. By the way, this has just gone off.
Yeah, sorry, it's mine.
Oh, okay. Professor Richard Falk, with whom Gilad just met, maybe he'll tell us about that, has said, Professor Falk was the former United Nations Special Rapporteur on Human Rights for Palestine, and Gilad just met with him, I believe yesterday, in Santa Barbara, and Professor Falk had said, quote, "A transformative story told with unflinching integrity that all of us, especially Jews of the world, who care about real peace as well as their own true identity, should not only read Gilad's books, but reflect upon and discuss them widely." So I want to, with that, I want to have everyone welcome Gilad Atzmon.
Hello everybody. As far as I can remember, this is the first time I speak in this city. I've visited California quite a few times in the past, and I'm very happy to see this room packed with people who want to listen and maybe debate me. About the introduction, I wasn't really censored in Israel.
Okay.
I just felt very uncomfortable with the way Israel was treating the Palestinians, and I realized at a certain stage that I was living on someone else's land, which was very troubling for me. And it took me a while before I understood that Israel is a state. States come and go. Palestine is the land. And I left Israel and I decided that I will come back when it is a state of its citizens. It should probably going to be called Palestine. And I don't see myself as a world citizen. I'm a British citizen. and I may have to leave Britain soon because for the second time in my life I have to run away from Israel. Britain has become, and by the way America is not far behind, or maybe slightly ahead, an extended Jewish state. Most of our parliament members are friends of Israeli clubs. They are more dedicated to Tel Aviv than to Liverpool or Hartlepool. And I think that when you look at the situation in AIPAC and all those American congressmen and politicians and presidential candidates groveling in front of this club, you understand that your state, your country is also hijacked. But we will talk about it in a second. Okay, so as Barbara mentioned, and thank you so much for helping to arrange it, and everybody else for coming and supporting this event. I do know that some people walked out to cancel this event. I realized that there was a call from the local synagogue. Apparently, the First Amendment didn't make it into this local synagogue. More troubling is I heard about an academic called Stephen Zunis, who also tried to interfere with this event. And I really find it disturbing that an academic, supposedly a person with a brain, use such tactics instead of being here and debate me. Unless you're, Stephen, are you here? So apparently, he should be here and debate me. This is the American ethos. Okay, as Barbara mentioned, I've been a subject to an intensive smear campaign now for probably 10, 15 years. I have been slandered very often. I've seen anti-Semitism, racism, Holocaust denial, pretty much everything except pedophilia was attached to my name. And I don't understand why they don't call me a pedophile, because they didn't try to substantiate any other claim. You know, so if, you know. And I never sued anyone because I do believe in freedom of speech, and I also believe the truth is of a very unique, made of a very unique nature. And this is a very interesting idea to share with all of you. I think the truth always unveils itself. And this is why the project that you are so committed to is so meaningful. I know that you don't like Donald Trump.
You're right, Franz.
No, I'm not talking here as a Trump supporter. Not that I approve any of his policies, but try to think how much truth came to the fore thanks to Trump. The way we understand the society in which we are living in, the way we understand the dystopia, the way we understand the fact that we are just one step from a civil war in America, once again. All right, so all of that was brought to light by Trump. Try to think about Palestine. I do understand that many of you support Palestine, and this is great. The Palestinians didn't do very well in understanding their own liberation struggle, partially because their war toward liberation was hijacked by a solidarity movement that has been duplicitous all along. Then Donald Trump came along with his Jerusalem initiative, and within 1 week the Palestinians started to talk once again about what? About the right of return. All those years thanks to the solidarity movement, the right of return, which is the Palestinian cause, was brushed aside and was replaced by all those strange campaigns. We started to talk about end of occupation. End of occupation is not the right of return. It supports the existence of the Jewish state in Palestine. We start to talk about apartheid. Israel is not apartheid. Israel is far worse than apartheid. Apartheid is a racist system of exploitation. The Israelis don't want to exploit the Palestinians, they want them out. Israel is an ethnic cleanser. It is, sorry, I know that there is a camera here. It's a Nazi-like ideology. All right? So we had a solidarity movement that was navigating us towards nowhere. Trump saved us. In his own funny way. Okay, what is happening is that in the last 2 years, in the last 18 months, the campaigns against me intensified because they called me all those names and it didn't work out. So you cannot call me an anti-Semite if I'm a jazz musician, in case you didn't know. 3 out of 4 musicians are Jewish. It doesn't work, you know. Hitler didn't have a Jewish drummer with him. And they cannot call me an Holocaust denier if I am teaching in Germany and Austria. It doesn't work. So they decided to ruin me financially. I don't know if you know, but in Britain, libel suits are a very expensive thing. You probably heard about some cases, very famous case of David Irving. Yeah. If you lose, you are ruined. More concerning, if you win, you're also ruined. All right? Because it is a very, very expensive process. I was taken to court for saying that campaign against anti-Semitism, we have this campaign against anti-Semitism, terrorized the entire British political establishment. You heard about Jeremy Corbyn, other politicians. I said, it's really a business plan. Yes. You are an anti-Semite, and then give me money. Yeah. I'll provide. I was taken to this, there was a libel suit filed against me, and took me very short time to realize that it's going to cost a lot of money. And it led nowhere. We settled, but I ended up with legal bills around, I'll speak in dollars, around $150,000. Now, this is a lot of money for a jazz musician and a writer. But the most incredible thing for me was that I didn't realize back in March that people are really reading me, take me seriously, and support me, and wouldn't let me fall. My lawyer told me, listen, Gilad, in order to file the defense, we will need something like 20,000 quid, $30,000. Oh my God, you know, I'll do this kind of fundraiser, and hopefully I'll raise 5, and then I'll do a few concerts and crowdfunding concerts or whatever. Shockingly enough, I remember it was kind of Friday in March. I came back from Beirut. I received kind of a very nice award in Beirut from the Palestinian Force Convention, which is an answer to those 20 Palestinians who don't like me to talk. 20 out of 7 million, you know. And we know now that it was actually written by a Jew, who is now supporting me because he himself was kicked out from the Labour Party for being an anti-Semite. You don't want to go there. It is so idiotic. Anyway, I started it at 11 o'clock, and I was really worried because I thought maybe everybody will laugh at me. You know, I'm a very proud man. I always worked for a living, playing music, writing books. I never asked people to help me out. The incredible news is that within few hours, I sent one letter to my supporters, to my readers, and within few hours, I had £5,000 or £6,000 or £7,000, $10,000. A lot of it came from Israel. The biggest donation came from Israel and from Jews,
Wow.
which is understandable because a lot of Israelis and Jews feel very embarrassed by this kind of endless Ziocentric campaigns, and they understand also, if they read a bit of Jewish history, that this is how Jews getting themselves into trouble. Because if I argued 6 months ago, one year ago, that there is no anti-Semitism, I can tell you, there is anti-Semitism now. And it's this organization that should be blamed for it. However, within 2 days, it was Friday, I started on Saturday night, I realized that we collected the $30,000 that I needed for the defense. I asked my lawyer, shall I stop? That's what you said. Don't stop. Don't stop. 2 reasons. You can't imagine, and I couldn't imagine how expensive it is. You know, you're dealing with people who are making £1,000, $1,500 an hour. You know, lawyers and stuff like that. Not my lawyers were I worked on, they support a lot of what I'm doing, so they were, but the other side, you don't want to know. My lawyer told me it's going to be tens of thousands of dollars, and if we go into trial, it can be millions. And he said another thing, you better get as much money as you can now, because if you lose, nobody will give you a penny. This is something that you want to remember. Okay. The good news is that I collected a lot of money. Thousands of people came forward. And I'm left with this $30,000, and I decided not to collect any more money through my site, which is very easy. I'm just sitting there, and the money comes. I decided to come over, to move from city to city every night. I don't play, to come to talk to you people, to use this slander moment, the peak of this slanderous momentum, in order to reach more people. And in fact, I maybe recognize 2 or 3 faces in the room. All of you are new to me, and I'm probably new to many of you. Some of you told me already that you happen to read me. So here we are, we meet. What I'm going to do in the next 40 minutes, and I'll try to be as brief as I can, I'll try to explain to you why some people see me as the most dangerous person on this planet. And they may be right. I introduced a few ideas that in practice revolutionize. It's quite arrogant to say what I'm saying now, but it's not a problem because I'm arrogant. I'm arrogant. It's not that I'm kind of trying to pretend to be arrogant. It's very natural. I introduced a few ideas that changed the way we see things. Palestine, Israel, and if I'm successful, I may even manage to help you to see yourself and America in a different light. The first thing that I did, when I kind of start to look into this Palestinian-Israel conflict, Zionism, you mentioned your issues with Zionism, I realized something is totally wrong here. I grew up in Israel. The word Zionism means nothing to Israelis. We don't know what it is. Why? Zionism was the promise to bring along a Jewish state. This state was founded in 48, and since that point, Israel forgot about Zionism. It became Israeli politics. Zionism was probably meaningful to my parents, who were born in the late 30s. It was very meaningful to one of my grandparents who came from Eastern Europe to settle in Israel, in Palestine, with the hope that it will turn into Israel. I realized that if Israel defines itself as the Jewish state, and it defines itself as the Jewish state, it's not, they even have now a Jewish national bill. The first questions that we must ask are, who are the Jews? What is Judaism? What is Jewishness? And how these terms relate to each other, and how they impact Israeli politics, Jewish politics, lobby politics, 9/11 politics. I basically stood up and said, don't talk about Zionism, because when you talk about Zionism, the Israelis don't even know what you talk about. If you're an Israeli and I come to you and say, listen, I'm an anti-Zionist, great. It goes over your head. Because you wouldn't see yourself as a Zionist. It's an archaic, strange concept that belongs to our grandmothers. I actually started to look what is the meaning of the J word. I realized that it's not the Z, it is the J word. And because I was trained as a philosopher, I defined those categories. When we're talking about the J word, we're referring to Jews, the people, something that I don't care about. I don't talk about Jews. It's a dangerous concept. We have Judaism, the religion. I hardly deal with it. And we have Jewishness, which is the ideology, the culture, the politics. Instead of asking what Jews are, what I do, I ask, what do those people who identify themselves as Jews identify with? This is a completely different question, but it is way more interesting. So in my work, there is not a single reference to race, to biology, to ethnicity. There is hardly work on religion. I ask instead what being a Jew entails. And this is a very dangerous concept, because I guess because a lot of Jews, both Zionist and anti-Zionist, want to silence me. Why they want to silence me? Because I actually found out that from a perspective of Jewish identity politics, there is no difference between ultra-Zionist and ultra-Jewish anti-Zionists. Why? Because they both operate in racially exclusive political cells. What is our problem with Israel? Israel is a racist state. But in Israel, in the parliament, in the Knesset, the third biggest party is a Palestinian party, the Arab party. In JVP, Jewish Voice for Peace, which is pro-Palestinians, you wouldn't find a single Palestinian or Christian or a goy, what they call Gentile, on the board. And you, Barbara, you won't be able to be on the board, I'm sorry, because you are not racially qualified. One would expect that the Jewish anti-Zionists would be slightly less racist than the state that, which they oppose. But the truth of the matter is the complete opposite. I do believe that many of you see yourself as progressives. Am I right?
Yeah. Yes.
I have problems with progressives as well. Don't worry. No one can say about me that I'm a racist because I hate everyone equally. No, I don't hate anyone. When I'm getting to progressives, my problem with Jewishness was chosenness. What is chosenness? Is the belief that you are somehow better. And when I start to look at a lot of Jewish discourses and a lot of Jewish religions, because Judaism is just one religion. At a certain stage, Bolshevism was a big Jewish religion. A few years later, it was Ayn Rand, egotism. Now atheism is a Jewish religion. I'm an atheist Jew, you know. Zionism, one of the most important Jewish philosopher, Israeli, Yeshaya Leibovich, said already in the 70s, Jews believe in so many things, but they all believe in the Holocaust. Because the Holocaust is the new Jewish religion, most popular Jewish religion. I asked myself, what is the common element? Because these religions are very different and sometimes contradict each other. Bolshevism and egocentrism, Ayn Rand. Zionism, anti-Zionism. Judaism, atheism. The one thing that all Jewish religions and all Jewish identities have in common is that they facilitate a sense of chosenness. Even if you look at the Holocaust, look what we went through, and then we came to Israel and we managed to resurrect ourselves, and you even took the land from the Palestinians. It's very special. Every Jewish religion is a celebration of exceptionalism, of a privilege, of chosenness. And I don't feel very comfortable with chosenness. This is why I decided to be a goy. I stopped being a Jew because I decided to demote myself into an ordinary human being, boring, like you. Yeah? No. My sense of humor is like getting me into a lot of trouble. But it's still better than a sense of tumor. Wrong, so wrong. But anyway, the issue here that it took me some time to realize that being progressive is also a form of chosenness. If I'm progressive, it means that you there are a reactionary. I attribute to myself a unique specialness. Now, this is not the only understanding of progressiveness. This is the danger that you must take into account when you see yourself as progressive, that you don't start to adhere to your own chosenness. But if you want to understand why so many Jews, secular Jews, see themselves as progressives, they said, oh, instead of having God make them chosen people, now they've realized that they can make themselves into the chosen people. All right? By just being progressive. My digging, I'm sure that you have noticed that nothing that I'm saying here deals with race, bigotry, hatred. I elaborate on those issues in philosophical terms. I'm a philosopher. But I definitely managed to subside or shake some element within the Jewish universe, and instead of debating me, by the way, until now, not a single person, academic, politician, activist managed to say, Gilad, you are mistaken. In page 22, you are wrong. Nobody has ever found a mistake. I mean, no one. I found a few mistakes in my work, but I won't tell you where they are because I'm trying to sell the books. But no, nobody has pointed at a mistake that your argument is flawed. No one. Instead, what they try to do is to silence me. And this is actually it was very helpful for me. I always try to learn from this horrendous journey. If they try to destroy me for something I say, it's probably because I'm very close to the truth. I was in the Air Force, and the first thing that they tell you in the Air Force is when you start to get a lot of flak, it means that you are above target. All right? Okay. So when everybody tried to kill me, I know, it's here. You know, I just look down. All right? Now, another very problematic topic that I delved into is the Holocaust. Now, I'm not an historian, but I realized that a lot of efforts are made to silence some people who have different views of the Holocaust. This is very concerning. What is it? You know, some of my members of my family perished in this horrendous chapter. But I've never been offended by the idea that somebody think that there were no gas chambers and they actually met in mass shooting. Actually, I'm very interested in it. You know, instead of presenting an historical narrative, which is not my job, I'm not a historian, I don't speak German, I don't speak Russian, I don't speak Polish, I cannot study any of those topics as a proper scholar. I decided as a philosopher to look into the meaning of history. And it took me a very short time to define what history is. History is the attempt to narrate the past as we move along. The meaning of it is that history is changing all the time, constantly. And I'll give you a beautiful example. Some of you heard the word Nakba? Yeah. The Nakba is the 1948 ethnic cleansing of the Palestinians. It happened in 1948. 750 out of around 1 million Palestinians were ethnically cleansed from Palestine. Shockingly enough, nobody spoke about the Nakba in the West till the early 2000s. Those who are familiar with the notion know very well that we started to hear this word in 2002, 2003, 2004. Why? Because of the crisis in Kosovo, people started to talk about ethnic cleansing. This was a new notion that appeared in our intellectual discourse in the media and so on in the early 2000s. And then some historians, Israeli and Palestinians, people like Benny Morris Ilan Pape, Palestinian Nur Masalha, said, oh my God, ethnic cleansing. This is what happened to us in 48. So we see an evolvement of a new term that helps us to understand what happened in the past. And this is exactly what history must be. History must be a constant dialogue between the past and the future, between the changing future and the changing past. When we understand that, history becomes an ethical, universal, moral lesson. When we learn that history is the revisiting and revising the past, we understand that killing millions of people in the name of Jewish suffering makes us into the Nazis of our time. If we would understand the Holocaust properly, we wouldn't be in Iraq. We wouldn't be in Syria. By the way, Trump is just leaving Syria another way. We wouldn't be in Syria. Your Congress wouldn't grovel in front of AIPAC. So again, I looked into the Holocaust and I produced a message that is ethical, but it's not pro-Israeli. It's pro-humanity. This makes me into a Holocaust denier. Not really. And no one buys into it. And this is why thousands of people are rallying behind me. In 2011, I published this book. You read the endorsement by Richard Falk, Professor Richard Falk. And this was a study of Jewish identity politics. I was the first one to speak about identity politics in methodical academic terms. In 2016, Trump won. On the 8th of November, on the 9th of November, everybody started to talk about identity politics. Nobody understands it. Because you cannot really understand anything in current American realm, because understanding means being in a conflict of some very important people and very important groups, very influential. What I did in 2016, I published Being in Time, and it is basically an attempt to universalize what I learned about Jewish identity politics into something that is global, so we understand the world that we are living in. And this is what I'm trying to do now, to talk about you guys. In 2016, at the night of the election, it became clear to me, and I hope that it's clear to you now, that America is divided in the middle between the Eze people, people who speak as a Jew, as a Muslim, as a woman, as a gay, as a trans, as a black, as a Hispanic, and the Americans, who are also women and men and gays and Muslims, but they speak as Americans. This split is very crucial, because this split is World War III. World War III is not a war between states or across borders. World War III is a war that splits societies, states, and even families. World War III, and I think that you are very close to a civil war, God forbidden, but I wouldn't do it in front of a camera, But on a personal level, I can present few scenarios that within 2 hours, you have a war in this country between the so-called red and the blue in the seashores. When you look at your map, the demography of the split in the recent midterm election, you see 2 people. You hardly speak the same language. You don't read the same books. You don't watch the same TV. You're different, and you agree on nothing. And the same happens in Britain. And the same happened in France. And if you look at France like 2 weeks ago with the yellow vest, it looks like a civil war, isn't it? I started to look into it. How all of that happened to us? Like everyone else, I was a lefty when I was 18. When you don't own anything, it's very simple to be a lefty, you know, because you want to share everything. Once you have a flat, or something, oh, maybe sharing is not a great idea. But, you know, no, but I believe in equality. I still believe in equality. And what I loved about the left idea, they used to tell us, it doesn't matter if you're a Jew or a gay, a lesbian, black, we are all together. We are all together here against the bad guys in the city. Beautiful. At a certain stage, the left took the complete opposite narrative. Instead of being together, they started to cut us into segments. Segments of as a woman, as a Jew, as a Muslim, as a black, as a, rather than being together, fighting for education, for work, for manufacturing, so we have a good reason to wake up in the morning. Instead of that, they give us drugs for free. It's great in California. I like coming here, but you know, I would like to go to you know, to drive a car after. You know, great stuff you have here. All right, manufacturing, education, health. This is what we have to fight for together. Instead of that, they broke us, the left, into segments. All we do is fighting each other. The black with the white, the feminist with the male chauvinist, the gays with the hetero. And who is funding all of it? People like George Soros, through an Open Society Institute. Shocking! Now, the most shocking thing is that nobody speaks about it. How is it possible that such a huge shift happened in our society and nobody in the academia speaks about it, writing books about it? Nobody in the press telling us our society is changing. Did you notice that once we were free and now we are only free to buy? We were reduced into consumers. Our politicians are doing one thing, sustaining consumption by means of credit. How is it possible that I'm telling this to you? I'm a saxophonist. Every professor should be shouting from every speaker, from every possible outlet, that our society, our universe is hijacked, and nobody says a thing. Why nobody says a thing? Because a very dangerous, lethal gadget was installed in each of us, and it's called political correctness. What is political correctness? Political correctness is politics that doesn't allow political opposition. Politics that doesn't allow political opposition is tyranny. Or tyranny, how do you say? Tyranny or tyranny? Tyranny, okay. It's tyranny, it's dictatorship. Political correctness is way more dangerous, because in the case of tyranny, you know that you don't like Hitler, or Stalin, or Bibi Netanyahu. But in the case of political correctness, it is you who suppress yourself. It's self-suppression. This is the old principle. So you say something, and people say, don't say it again, and the next thing, you don't say it, and then the next phase, you just don't think about it. And eventually, you become a zombie. Why you have so many zombie films in America? Because you have become zombies. And they try to prepare you. It's educational. It's not just you, I'm the same. The thing here is, what I try to do is to identify who introduced political correctness. Have you ever thought about it? How did they do it to you? I'll save time. Archie Bunker. Archie Bunker. Archie Bunker. Every Saturday night, I think it used to be, 8 o'clock in the evening, the most funny character whom we all loved. I was 7 years old, watched it in Jerusalem. These kind of subtitles. This character would alienate a different sector, the lesbians, the black, the Hispanic. It would be very funny, and there would be this idiot behind him, Mr. Meathead, whom we didn't like at all. He wasn't funny. Surprise, surprise. 40 years later, we are all meatheads. We adopted the meathead philosophy, and our president is Archie Bunker. Amazing, isn't it? Do you understand why people don't like me? I'm slightly too funny for the current tyranny of correctness. It's like I don't fit very well. But I'm a jazz musician, For me, as a philosopher, as opposed to an activist, I'm not an activist, I've never been an activist. I don't like activism, I like being active. Activists are people who tell you what is right and who is wrong, what is the right thing to say. I really want nothing to do with this universe. I'm a philosopher. Philosophers teach you and themselves how to refine questions. And the process of refining questions is endless, like the search for truth. It's a constant battle. And we enjoy seeking truth. Because we're not supposed to find it. This is why I play the saxophone. I'm practicing every day. And I'm not even getting better. All right? I'm coming kind of to an end, and I want to sum it up. What I realized along the study of the current dystopia, and it's something that started for me with an attempt to dissect Jewish identity politics. I realized that the old dichotomy between Athens and Jerusalem provides us with most of the answers we need. Let me tell you about Athens and Jerusalem. Athens is the birthplace of philosophy. I'm talking here in a metaphorical terms, some people say, oh, actually India was a bit before. It's true, Persia, I'm talking about Western discourse. For us Westerners, Athens is the birthplace of philosophy, the birthplace of logic, rationality, reason, coherence, consistency, the tragedy, beauty, science, In Athens, we think things through. In Jerusalem, we are following mitzvot. Jerusalem is the city of revelation. We receive a text full with laws, legalistic ideas, and we follow them. The best way to explain it is the Ten Commandments. Ten Commandments is Jerusalem. It's the opposite of ethics. While ethics teaches you how to think morally, the Ten Commandments tell you what not to do. It's much simpler. But let me tell you, I don't need you to tell me not to kill. I gathered it. All right? Ethical people don't need God to tell them not to kill. They know. Ethical people don't need God to tell them, don't steal. Don't sleep with your neighbor's wife. I think I tried it once. With his approval. No. All right? The difference between ethics and Jerusalem, or between Athens and Jerusalem, Athens teaches you how to think. Jerusalem goes beyond thinking. It's a legalistic pattern. The tragedy that we see in America, in Britain, in France, in Germany, is that we are becoming Jerusalemites. And you see it in every aspect. Do you remember that we had Grenfell Tower in London? This house, this skyscraper that was engulfed with fire. And they found out already in the morning that it was covered with flammable claddings. How did you do it? The engineer says, what do you want? I was following regulations. This is Jerusalem. Regulations is Jerusalem. In Athens, an engineer think, maybe putting flammable claddings on the building, it's a bad idea. In Jerusalem, you put speed cameras. And this we see it in England. I'm sure you have them. We have speed cameras here. So what do you have when you have speed cameras? You speed in between the cameras. Yeah? Because you become a legalistic. You become a Dershowitz. You search for the loopholes. Yeah? This is what a good lawyer is doing in the Jerusalem universe. When you look at your country, what is the best thing about America? Why people from China and from Syria and from India and from Russia, all those years, wanted to come here? You were the land of the free. You were an Athenian haven established in the spirit of the Enlightenment and the French Revolution. I'm not going to tell you that we can talk about the Enlightenment for hours. It's not such a great thing. But it is the First Amendment that made you into special people. What is the best thing you have ever created? Not the atomic bomb. Jazz music. What is jazz music? For me, America was New York, was Mecca. Jazz is my jihad. Why? What is jazz? Freedom. It came from here. What is left of it, out of it? Rien. Nothing. To save this world, to save ourselves, to save our kids, we have to reinstate Athens. And this brings me to my final sentence. Many of us support Palestine. I'm traveling a fair amount. I've been traveling for many years in America, and I've visited places here that I believe look far worse than Gaza. Friends, by now, we are all Palestinians. And we are all Palestinians because, like the Palestinians, we are not allowed to utter the name of our oppressor. This is very frightening, and this is where we have to start to liberate ourselves. Thank you. Yeah, what I could do, okay, maybe if you want, I can play maybe something on the saxophone.
Oh, great.
Yeah, so what I'll do, I'll play just one tune. It's a tune because we spoke about Palestine. I'm going to play a tune that was, it will be short, don't worry. It is a tune that was sung by many years by my favorite Palestinian trumpet player, Louis Armstrong. And I do it because, like Louis Armstrong, I do believe that if you do the right thing and you ask the right questions, and we put me, I won't say the White House because I realize that as a foreigner, you know, you have to change. If you put me at least in the 10 Downing Street, which is kind of the British White House, I can assure you that you will get a wonderful world in B flat.
Could you just name the oppressor, please?
That's going to be my question.
Okay, so try to ask.
That's the first question.
If I would name the oppressor, or who I believe to be the oppressor, it would mean that Athens is back and the war is over.
Go ahead.
No, I don't want. I think that we have a struggle, but I'm actually punished because what I do here and here, I do name the oppressor, and it is more than one oppressor. It is ideological. For instance, Jerusalem is the ultimate oppressive template. So I already named it. Who is there to sustain Jerusalem? You ask yourself, you don't need Gilad. Who are the people that impose political correctness on us? Who was the guy that invented Archie Bunker? Was it John Smith or Norman Lear? My job, and I'm not an activist, is rather than to give you the names, to find who is the oppressor for you. If I start to tell you it is Israel, it's Zionists, it's the Jews, I'll become a Jerusalemite myself. What I try to do, and this is how I teach music, I learned that I can teach everything I know about music in 3 minutes, which basically ended my career as a lecturer, you know. Because you do 3 minutes, but to do it over 3 years, it's a bit of a stretch. And this is how I teach music. I tell my students, all you have to do, if you want to be a great saxophonist, great pianist, great lover, great painter, great philosopher, great writer, great anything, great woman, because it's a woman center. You have to learn to identify, is the first thing. What are your difficulties? Now it sounds very simple, but it is not. Because the one thing that we never admit is our difficulties. You have to learn to admit where we struggle. So if I'm talking about saxophone, is it your technique, it's your tuning, it's your ears? And you have to work on that. Nobody's doing it because we're always living in denial. Number 2, you develop your own tactics to deal with your problems. This is something that not a single teacher can teach you. I can teach you how to work on my problems. But you have to learn how to work on your problems. Number 3, just work on it. The same applies to our political thinking. You don't understand what is going on. Ask yourself why. The answers are always here. And everything you need to know about the world is inside you. Otto Weininger, one of my favorite philosophers, said, scientists, physicists, they look at the world and they tell us something about the world. Slightly banal. In arts, self-realization is realization of the world. Understanding yourself, you understand the world. Everything you want to know about 9/11 is inside you. It's not about architectural and structural issues, because 9/11 it's more than just one event. It's a chain of events that made this world very difficult to comprehend. All right? But the one that doesn't comprehend is here. So the answer is here. And this is my approach as a philosopher, as a German philosopher. This is how I see things. So rather than me telling you it's Moshe, it's Yosef, it's Bibi, it's Trump, no, it is slightly more complicated. But the most beautiful thing, when we start to dig into these issues, we realize that a lot of us saying the same thing. Everybody is upset now. It's not just you. All right? Everybody is upset. Everybody is looking for answers.
Okay, is this on?
Yeah.
It is on. Okay, so we're going to move to Q's and A's. What I'd like to do is to remind everybody, please generously donate to Gilad. And there are many ways to do that. There's a big jar as you leave. And I'm going to pass the donation bucket again during the, for the first time during the Q's and A's. I know that those of us who are in the peace and justice and truth movement, we're not wealthy, but Gilad will be grateful for anything that you can do.
It's true, I'm also not wealthy, but I may be more wealthy after today.
So anyway, do we have a question? What we'd like to do we need for our recording to use the mic for the questions? We do not?
Probably not.
We need it for
As long as people...
It's okay, it's okay. Yeah, it's easy, it's a wireless.
Oh,
Yeah.
you've got a wireless. Okay, good, fine.
I'll try it without. Can you hear me?
Good.
Just in case?
Yeah.
I'll use the mic.
So you don't know me.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. That was very enlightening. I'd like to understand this concept between Jerusalem versus Athens to make sure I understand the way you're intending it.
Yeah.
Because I'm reflecting on that as both sides of our brain, in essence, the right and left hemispheres. Also, you said you separated yourself as a philosopher versus an activist.
Yeah.
So again, in all of these, it seems as though it's the intellectual side or understanding versus the application. Do you favor one versus another, or do you see them as one?
To start with, I definitely favor Athens, without doubt. Leo Strauss, the guy who basically invented neoconservatism, or was, I should say, the most influential intellectuals on those who call themselves neocons, is the guy that introduced Athens and Jerusalem to the West, not to the West, to the Anglo-American West. And he actually believed that it's a dialogue, it's a dialectics. I believe that the disaster that we see now in America is due to the fact that Athens is wiped out, obliterated, and Jerusalem is controlling everything. And by saying Jerusalem, I don't mean Bibi. I'm talking about the ideology. And the fact that the Jewish lobby or Israeli lobby, AIPAC and Israel, are so influential here, are actually part of this Jerusalemite cosmos that destroys our life. But Jerusalem is not Jews and Athens going. Now, you're not the first one to see that there is similarities kind of to cognitive science and how the way the brain works. For me, rather than talking about it physiologically, because I'm not a physiologist, I'm a philosopher, I'm talking about the difference between thinking things through as opposed to following commandments. Now, when it comes to following commandments, you have to be very clever as well. It's not a matter of stupidity. Some people, lawyers, are extremely sophisticated, legalistically. Accountants, what the accountant is doing is basically cheating the state on your behalf. How he's doing it? No, I'm sorry if I offended anyone, but how do they do it? They find loopholes. If you say that you got this from your wife before she died, and then we don't pay tax. Now you have to be sophisticated because you cannot think about it, because this is why you hire an accountant. This is Jerusalem. Because in a lot of the Jerusalemite acts, it is very easy to see that it is non-ethical. One of the most, I'll give you an example. I just had, I witnessed a debate in my home about the First Amendment between my son and a friend. And my son said, listen, what is happening now in America it has hardly anything to do with First Amendment, because First Amendment is very specific about government. You know, the government cannot interfere. And that friend of mine, who is a proper Athenian, said, and actually I won't mention his name, but I think that some of you are familiar with his writing. He said, no, you don't understand. Your interpretation is Talmudic. You go, rather than understanding the First Amendment as a principle that adhere to the notion of freedom, you become very picky in order to legitimize a lot of non-ethical activities. All right? This is the difference. The same issues can be looked from both Jerusalemite and Athenian perspectives. I hope that I made it easier rather than more complicated.
The libraries of the world are full of books that are created by Athenian type thinking.
And Jerusalemite as well.
But the Jerusalemite, you know, we can, and forgive me, we can, and I agree with you. It's an obstacle to overcome.
Yeah.
But it's also the activist side. If we don't have an activist that carries the Athenian ideology forward, we're gonna still have, our civil war is still gonna happen if there's no activist to stop the civil war.
Okay. We are tapping into a different issue, a different issue. To start with, I reverse my thought. We have a lot of Athenians who write books. Jerusalemites, in general, burn books. All right? And by the way, this is what we see here. This professor, Stephen Zunes, who tried to stop me here, is a Jerusalemite. And if he was mildly Athenian, he would be here today. All right? Debating with me. Now, one of the most interesting things that we can see in America and in England, in the West in general, is that there is not a single force who knows how to unite us into one people. We are really split. We're really shoved in a very dark alleyway. And this is where I'm very critical of the right, and especially the white nationalist right. And I stretch your question now, but this is something that is very important for me to say, and maybe it will resolve the issues. Where do I have, and by the way, I realize that this is a Women for Peace Center, or how do you call it?
Women's International League for Peace. And
Women International League for Peace. So maybe what I'm saying now will upset some of you, but this is not what I try to do. I try to make you think. So it will be interesting for me to hear your reaction and your criticism of what I'm about to say. Okay? I'm taking a risk here. But being a jazz musician is a suicidal act anyway, so, you know. Okay. What was Hitler's biggest problem when you look at it from an ethical, universal point of view? I'll save the time. He was a racist. It doesn't sound very clever. Everybody knows that Hitler was a racist. Fascism is not necessarily a problem. Fascism speaks about equality within borders, within context. So Italian fascism was all about equality of the Italian people. Nazism was originally equality of German-speaking people. And this is not how we learn it. We learned this chapter in school. This is why we had Anschluss. The Austrians were so happy to be with the Germans because they spoke German. And the same applies to the Sudeten in Czech Republic and so on and so on. Hitler came and said, no, equality of one race, the Aryan, we don't like it. Because if you're born in Austria or in Germany or in the Sudeten and you belong to a different race, Romani or Jewish or black, you have a problem. We agree that Hitler was wrong or non-ethical. If this is true to say about Hitler. Shockingly enough, the idiotic new left has adopted the most problematic aspect of Hitler philosophy. They identify with their biology. Gays, skin, Jews with the Jewish mother, all those biological, modern identity politics segments are identified with their biology, and this also applies to women. All right? Where is my problem with the idiotic right? Instead of standing up and trying to counter all of it and to unite us as Americans, they went and started to identify with their white skin. So they actually operate as a segment of the identitarian left. It's very problematic. And I raised this issue with few white nationalists, and they actually thought, yeah, you know, we have to think about it. And I do realize that they actually do think about it, and I hope that they will move on. Not that I care if people can define themselves politically as women, as black, as Jews, as gays, as trans. So people can also define themselves as white. Okay? In a universal world. If you can identify with your skin, it is kosher to be white, black, yellow, whatever you want. But I think that all of that is wrong. Sorry.
I want you to know that Women's International League for Peace and Freedom has rethought the idea of separating women from men, and they do accept men as members. It is certainly a women's side. Men and women are welcome.
I really appreciate it, because I knew that I'm coming here to a center, and shall I say it? And I was brave enough, and I'm very happy that you made it very. Yeah.
Here's the problem with that is that all these people have been marginalized so much over the years that you have to identify yourself. Otherwise, you know, you just kind of get swept under the rug.
Okay, so this is the common argument. This is the common argument against.
But
no. Okay. Let me address it.
okay.
I don't want to live in a society that discriminates anyone. All right? I don't want to live in a society that discriminates anyone. I want to live in a society where disabled or discriminates affects the way I see myself, and I should care for it. And this is actually something that is fundamental to the American ethos. You are very caring people. You are very caring people, and you actually have lost, I would say, this unique quality. I want to live in a society that gays can be gays, and Jews can be Jews, and black can be black, and white can be white, and celebrate what they believe in, as long as they don't celebrate it on the expense of other people.
I do believe that's what we all want.
Maybe this is very possible, but it's very clear to me. Yesterday we spoke. It was a very small meeting, but it was very interesting. I had some very interesting opinions, and a person who actually supports identitarian politics said it's not true. We actually support all other segments or margins or identities.
Right.
And it was very easy for me to challenge. So we had LGBT. And LGBT were kind of mutually inclusive to the L, to the G, to the D, and then they expanded to LGBTQ. So the queer joined in. Great. And then the A joined in, LGBTQA, the asexual joined in. But as far as I can say, the white are not included. Now, if you can identify with your biology,
How could you say that? Like, most of the LGBT people that are in...
yeah, but they don't identify as white. I'm not supporting white identification. I'm not a white nationalist. I'm critical of white, yeah? Of white nationalism. But if you can identify with your biology, I'm a universalist. I take, yeah? If you're a universalist, it should apply to everyone. More than that. Not just the white. Muslims also cannot integrate. And by the way, Muslims are not a biological identity, it's a belief. All right? So we are very, very selective. And why we are very selective? Because, and this is where you have to take it further, I'm not going to give you the names. You have to look into it and to utter the name of the oppressor. Why the LGBTQ is so selective? Why the Muslims are out? Why the whites are out? I leave it to you.
Here's a question.
Sorry.
Could you repeat the questions when you get them? If you get a question, could you repeat?
Yeah, for sure. No, but they have speakers.
Yeah, that's fine. It's on.
Hi, my name is Kevin P. Saunders. I ran for mayor of Marina, and I've been the target of censorship and defamation and slander to the point where I actually had to sue Mary Dewan and the MC Weekly, Bradley Zeev, Eric Cushman, and Sarah Rubin. You may have seen the KCBW piece that one of your executive directors took a real cheap shot at me and said that this group who I identify with, and let me say first that I think you are as much of a hero as that man, that man, that man, and I do believe actually that you are the most dangerous man in America right now. I'm also running for Bill Long's seat for District 17, and I'm running on an anti-APAC platform. The reason why I lost the Marina race, even though I'm far to the left of Bruce Delgado in every single issue, every single one, it was my pro-Palestinian anti-Zionism that torpedoed any political chance I have in this area. And it wasn't until, quite frankly, today, and listening to your campaign, ma'am, Dr. Honecker, is that Dr. Barbara? Broads like you are the
Persons like
people like you, ma'am, are the reason why man-child like me exists, and the strength that you, I don't know where it comes from for you, and for you, I know where it comes from for myself. I can only speak of that, but
Do you have a question?
yeah, I do have a question. I do.
You have a question?
I do. I just wanted to let you know that you're reaching people. I'm filing a statewide initiative called the HIFI, the Hollywood Integration and Fairness Initiative, where one, they dropped the rabbinical blessing requirement to open up a studio in Hollywood. That's true. Two, that we have a full examination of Kevin McDonald's culture and critique, and why we have these movies, these history documents, and every single person seems to have a Jewish or Zionist surname, and it seems like it's to the detriment and the non-existent of everybody else. And this idea of this chosen person thing, gets to the core of what you're talking about, of humanity. It's this other, it's this looking down. And I'm not going to get into the whole Israeli thing. It really isn't a question. I just want to let you know that when I'm going to donate money to you. I just cashed out in the pot business. And I'm going to donate $1,000 to you.
This is nice.
I'm going to meet you. I'm going to give you my number. I'm going to give you $1,000 because I think there is no more. The George Rileys, the people, these people are great, but you are an American global hero, and I just want to thank you from the bottom of my heart.
I'm an American.
You are an American hero, though. You are. I have to get going, but I'm going to leave my information here. If you can just let me know where I can drop off the $1,000, I'll go to the bank right now.
Okay.
I'll be right back. Are they open there? Thank you very much.
There's a question up here.
And shame on MCD.
Any more questions?
Shame on them.
Here's one back here.
Fourth estate is the only thing we have left. MC Weekly's taking a dump on all of us.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry, thanks. Sorry, I got here late. I didn't hear what you said at the beginning. And I've had this thought for years now. Before Clinton left office, there was almost an agreement between the Palestinians and the Israelis. Israel accepted every single word of it. And Yasser Arafat, the Palestinian leader, about 95%. And when Bush came in to the presidency, he said he didn't really care what they did to each other. So they started fighting again. And Arafat said, I'll take it, I'll take it, I'll take it. It was just ignored. I just wondered if that might be a place to start to get something done with those in that situation.
I think that we know that. Thank you so much. But I think that it will be very useful if you have questions that I can address, because it's probably going to take a few years before I'm back. So I want to leave you with as much as I can. If you have questions, I'll be delighted.
Any more questions?
I have a
Bonnie, yeah.
Bonnie?
I'm wondering, Gilad, if you could talk a little bit about the subject of victimization and how the identity politics encourages people to see themselves as victims, and why and how it seems to me that this victim mentality is really dangerous for people in general. To conceive of yourself as a victim is to make other people wrong and feel sorry for yourself.
It's a very important,
and then relegate yourself to a lower status. I mean, it's a terrible way of thinking about yourself, regardless of what's happened to you or your history, or, I mean, you can even think of somebody who's had terrible things happen to themselves, but isn't necessarily going to react and categorize themselves as a victim. I just see that as a very dangerous way of thinking, and that's promulgated by this identity politics.
Let's address it. It's a very important issue, and I don't know. I don't need the mic. And I actually deal with it extensively in this book. What does it mean to identify politically? Is to define an enemy. So if you're a woman, it's the male chauvinist. If you're black, it is the white. If you're gay, it's the homophobe. If you're the Jew, it's everyone else. And we try to start to form a political discourse that is based on this amalgam or conglomerate of all these victims.
Right.
And guess what? It doesn't work. Why it doesn't work? I'll prove you that it doesn't work before we address the why. Is there a gay state? No. Is there a lesbian Air Force? No. Is there a black state with atomic bombs that getting $4 billion from America every few months?
No.
No. So there is something that Jewish identity politics managed to achieve that no other identity has managed to achieve. Jewish identity politics is better than anyone else in this victim spiel. Because they have a dialectic relationship between victimhood and empowerment. Oh, we suffered the Holocaust. We kick out the Palestinians. Just 3 years after the liberation of Auschwitz, Palestine is wiped out. And the rest of you celebrating. Why the Jews are so good in identity politics? Because they do it for 3,000 years. If you practice the saxophone for 3,000 years, you'll be John Coltrane. This is why we kill you when you're kind of before 120. Because we need only one John Coltrane. They're doing it longer than anyone else. And they developed strategy. And I am punished. Why? Because I'm a whistleblower. Because I exposed this strategy. And the strategy is very simple. Jewish power, remember this one, Jewish power is the power to silence opposition to Jewish power. That simple. Now, they didn't invent it yesterday. It was invented in Babylon. And they improved it. Go home, get on the net, check out the Book of Esther. Have you heard about the Book of Esther? The Jews have Purim. You read about it. It's the manual for AIPAC. It is. We have kind of this guy, a man, he doesn't like the Jews, you know, Esther, Mordechai, listen, we're going into this Achashverosh, the king, and am I right? Am I right?
Yeah.
Yeah, you're right. It's AIPAC manual. They celebrate it every year. Even atheist Jews celebrate Purim. They don't out themselves in Yom Kippur, they do Purim. It's the most joyous holiday because it starts with kind of an anti-Semitic disaster, but through infiltration into government, they turn it into a genocide. They kill all the enemies, 70,000, and everybody's happy. All right? So this is the answer. There is something about victimhood that can be very powerful if you manage to turn it into empowerment.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Yeah, Gilad, this is a controversial question. But I worked with Mae Russell. I don't know if you recognize that name. She was the daughter of Rabbi Magnin of Los Angeles. And she became one of the foremost JFK researchers.
Yep.
Okay. Anyway, I worked with her the last year of her life. She died in October of 1988. And a year working one-on-one in her home, she said to me one day, she said, "You know, Barbara, the Jews kill their own to gain sympathy." So I want to fast forward ahead to, in the news within the last year or so, there was a young man who was, as I recall from the New York Times, he was a U.S. and Israeli dual citizen. And he was caught, he was found out. There were all of these so-called anti-Semitic acts around the United States.
Yeah, I know this story.
And there were over 100 of them, including swastikas, graffiti, and all of this. Turns out, and threats through phone and email. Turns out this one young man who was like the guy who, you know, Goldstein, who killed Rabin.
Yeah.
He was inflaming the appearance of anti-Semitic victimhood for the purpose of the power structure.
Okay. Okay. What is the question? It's all true. I'm familiar with it.
Right. My question is, to what extent are you aware of, or do you agree with, over a long period of time, that the Jews have been successful over a long period of time because the elite Jews actually target and victimize their own people?
Okay. This is a very complicated question, but a question that must be addressed. Because the one thing that we know, and we would agree, Jews are not exactly the most stupid people around. They're not stupid. Their elite is extremely functional and very successful. So the first question, and this question that bothers me a lot, how is it possible that such clever people with such clever elite end up in a disaster so often? Is it a legitimate question?
Yes.
Not only that it's a legitimate question, the Zionists, early Zionists, realized that this is the most important question Jews can ask. How is it possible that we have been expelled from every city we have ever lived in? And there is a very important Zionist, early Zionist thinker called Bernard Lazar, who wrote a book about the history of anti-Semitism, and he believed that there is something about chosenness that make the Jews hated. They don't intermingle properly. All right? So you come to America, you're Italian, and your son may speak a few words in Italian, but your grandson is proper Italian, proper American. That's it. They don't even remember. They don't. When it comes to many American Jews, they somehow see themselves, Palestine is their home, and they have nothing to do with Palestine. They never came from Palestine. I'm going to say something very problematic. Zionism is problematic, but most problematic things are truthful. Zionism admitted that there is an issue with the Jews. Zionism was the promise to civilize the Jews by means of homecoming. Homecoming. This wasn't their home, but they decided that this was their home. Zionism, and in that sense, I'm an early Zionist. I do believe that there is a problem, but I'm not sure that Zionism can produce the answer, because I think that they should work on themselves and solve this problem, but I'm not sure that this planet is the place to do it, because this planet is occupied. You cannot just come to a place and say, hey, you have to move, you know, we suffered, so bye-bye. All right? So this is a bit of a problem. However, the most frightening thing that may be implied by your question, and it is something that bothers me a lot, and I'm fully aware that there is a camera here, is that there is a possibility that those disasters are actually embedded in the system.
That they're engineered.
That they are engineered. I don't want to say engineered, because then it means that there is an engineer. Okay? Rather than talking about engineered, I would say that they are embedded in the cultural setting, because a lot of people who are clever enough, or at least as clever as me, are totally bewildered now. They say, what are they doing? They are really repeating every mistake that led to the Holocaust. Do they really want the Holocaust now? And there are other ways to look at it. Maybe if there is a lot of anti-Semitism, a lot of them moving to Israel, the real estate in Israel will come up. There are other ways to interpret, you know. But it is very frightening that such clever people with such an incredible elite manage to repeat the same mistake time after time. Now, why it is a concern for all of us? Because when they repeat these mistakes and antagonize the society against them, you become the Nazis. And you don't want to be a Nazi. So it's our duty to help ourselves and to help them. And I say it's not all of them. As I mentioned, my biggest donations came from Israeli Jews who obviously understand it. It's our duty to try to help our Jewish brothers and sisters understand that they are on a very, very dangerous path. This is how I see it.
And not to repeat it.
Of course.
I have a problem with several things that you said.
Me too, by the way.
You're bad.
I'm Jewish.
Yeah.
I believe that Jews form a large portion of the liberal thinking that you're talking about as far as Athenians versus Jerusalem.
Of course.
I do not believe the Jews have ever been kicked out of New York, where I'm from. Your statement they have been kicked out of every place they ever lived is wrong. And I think
this was Bernard Lazare, it wasn't me. This was Bernard Lazare. By the way, wait for New York. You know, don't. But this was Bernard Lazare. This was his observation, and it was pretty supported. All right.
Your attack on all the Jews, I think, is misguided. As you say yourself, in Israel there is a large proportion of Jews who think in the terms that I call liberal, which I do not consider a negative thing. Liberal thinking is Athenian thinking. There are Jews that are big supporters of ACLU and every other organization, which I assume you would think is a good thing, to guarantee the civil rights in the Bill of Rights, so on and so on and so on. You paint all the Jews with the brush of the neo-Zionists, the neocons and the Zionists. We are not all in that group.
Okay, let me address it. To start with, it was very important for me, and I did it continuously along this talk, to make sure that I don't talk about the Jews. I mentioned few times that Athens versus Jerusalem is not Jews versus Goyim. You remember, you heard me saying it, yeah? So you should have heard it as well. I made it very clear that it's not Jews and not Judaism, it's Jewish identification that I'm dealing with. I mentioned, as I now mentioned just a few seconds ago, that a lot of the people who support me are Jewish and Israelis because they agree with me. I don't have any doubt that there are some incredible Jews. I'll take it one step farther. When you look at the list of the leading humanists, universalist humanists of this world, you find quite a few Jews. Jesus Christ, Spinoza. I'm not talking about Marxists, but maybe Marx, Otto Weininger, and quite a few contemporaries. What they have in common? They're self-haters. Self-haters.
Self-haters?
Self-haters. Yeah.
Jesus.
This is how they are regarded by the surrounding Jewish community. It was assuming that the story about Jesus is historical. Yeah, some people that don't doubt it, you know. It was the Sanhedrin that brought Jesus to court. They ate his guts. There is something that you probably don't know. You may know. What is the Hebrew name for Jesus? Yeshu. Have you heard this word before?
Yeshua.
Yeshu. It comes from Yeshua. They call him Yeshu. Yeshu is abbreviation, a shortcut for may his name be eradicated forever. Yeshu. Yeah. Imach Shmo Vezichro. Which is exactly the same abbreviation that they use for Hitler, for Amalek. So the greatest man ever lived. All right? Now, but still, there is a reason what made Jesus into Jesus Christ. And what made Spinoza into the father of enlightenment. When you are a Jew and you encounter the tribal inside you, and this, I'm addressing your question, when you engage in self-negation, this is where you find an access to the universal. And this is why I wouldn't say so many, but this is why we have some Jews who are shockingly enlightening minds, and I wouldn't mind to say liberal minds, but I'm not sure that what I mean by liberal and what you mean by liberal is the same. For me, liberal is universal and ethical.
Liberated.
All right? And liberated. Yeah, all right? So it is true that some Jews, through the process of liberation, save themselves. What I can tell you is that I cannot think of any person who is politically self-identified Jew whom I would accept as a true humanist. And the answer is very simple. The reason is very simple. Because to be a true humanist, you have to be a true universalist. Once you identify as a Jew, you identify tribally with a biologically oriented category.
I disagree. I'm a Jew because my parents were Jews and their parents were Jews. Just a grouping.
Okay. No, it's not that you don't disagree yet. Do you identify yourself as a Jew? Okay, I'll make it very simple for you so you understand. One of the first things that I do in the Wandering Who, I ask, who are the people who identify as Jews?
Today, you mean?
Yeah. 3 groups. I'm like in the Israeli army, everything is divided into 3. Even if it's 4, we cheat, you know. People identify as Jews because they believe in God. Listen, people identify as Jews. It's not all. They can be identified because they believe in God. They are called followers of the Judaic reason. This is one. People can identify as Jews because they have Jewish parents, like yourself. Group 1 and Group 2 are innocent. If you believe in God, it doesn't make you into an ethnic cleanser. If you have Jewish parents, it doesn't make you into an ethnic cleanser. And people identify politically as Jews. This is a problem. I don't have an issue with people identifying as Jews. I have a problem with people identifying politically as Jews. And why? Because you identify politically with a racially exclusive club. Can you, Barbara, identify as a Jew?
I don't think so.
Why? Because she's not racially qualified. But I guess let's say that you are from Dutch and Russian. She can identify as Dutch and Russian. It is not exclusive as much as you identify as a Jew. The problem is not identifying as a Jew, it's why you identify as a Jew. And I spent a lot of time thinking about these categories, and I think that I did a good job. I'm familiar with your question. I asked myself along the years exactly the same question when I wrote this book. It's not a problem that you identify culturally, you like chicken soup. It's not a problem. Chicken soup is not a political argument. Matzah balls can be dangerous if you throw them, I don't know. No, chicken soup is not a problem. Making chicken soup into a political argument is a problem. We can. Anyway, do you want me to?
Yeah, it's 3.
Yeah, it's 3. Yeah.
The books are CD bills.
Yeah. This is very important. So as you probably realized, I need your support because I'm doing this tour because I'm collecting money for this battle. You are more than welcome to buy my stuff, or if you don't want to read me, it's understandable. You can just donate or send money. Thank you so much. I'll be here.
He's going to be selling his books and tapes up front.
What?